All right, 7th grade. The last time we talked, we were talking about that horrific bubonic plague that struck Europe in the 1300s. We know that after the Crusades, they did a lot of trading in Europe. On those trade ships came rats. On those rats came fleas, and the fleas brought the plague to Europe. It was incredibly deadly, incredibly painful. You all created public service announcements to warn the people of the Middle Ages about that plague. And although lots of people died, and it was very tragic, there are a couple benefits that happened, or changes that were beneficial in Europe afterwards. Number one being there was less peasants and less farmers to do the work, but the same number of fields to farm. So the peasants were able to demand wages, demand money. When they could do that, they could then save their money and buy their own farms, buy their own land. So they don't need the lords. They don't need the nobles anymore. So that's going to start chipping away or pulling apart feudalism here. All right. Now, today we're going to talk about the government. What happens? How do we make rules? How do we make laws in Western Europe after feudalism starts to fall apart? Well, we're going to see a rise in monarchies. You all remember telling me monarchies, that's a ruler or a government with one ruler, right? One ruler. Now, what we're going to see is as the lords and the nobles start to lose their power because peasants can now demand money and buy their own land, the only people left with a lot of power are still the kings and the queens, the monarchies. Okay, so now we've got kingdoms, countries that are governed by one ruler. All right, folks. The next couple slides I'm going to go through pretty quick. As always, if you're somebody who likes to fill in your notes, press pause at any time to pause me, and you can fill them in. So we have all kinds of monarchies in England with different kings and queens, such as Edward the Confessor, Harold Godwinson. Okay, we've got William the Conqueror comes along, all famous kings, okay, and monarchs in England. I'm breezing through. Obviously, if you want to stop and fill this in, look any of this up, feel free. Okay. But we see that the lords start to get less and less power. The kings get more and more power. Henry II, okay, he's in the long line as well. Oh, and real quick, let me back up, because I just noticed we have a slide with a bullet point that is super huge. Super huge. That usually means it's important. In England at this time of Henry II, they start using what are called trial juries. Basically, when somebody was brought up on charges of committing a crime, they would have a jury that would determine if the person was innocent or guilty, kind of like our juries today. They'd sit, they'd listen to the evidence. This is really big because the kings and queens can't just say, you're guilty, you did it, throw them into jail. Now we've got trial juries. Okay, it takes a little bit of the king's power away, a little bit of the noble's power away. Now people are starting to get a little bit more fair treatment, okay, under the law. It's not 100% equal, I'm not going to say that. It gets a little better. All right, that brings us to the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta. Now, folks, this is going to become really, really big. Magna Carta actually stands for the Great Charter. Okay, the Great Charter in Latin. After the death of Henry II, his son Richard is going to become the king. Richard also owned a lot of land in France and was busy fighting the Crusades, so he wasn't really focused on England and the people that he ruled. Richard's brother John eventually becomes king of England in 1199. And John ends up losing a lot of his land in France. So, in order to make up some of that money, he starts raising taxes and ignoring the English law. This makes the nobles really angry. The nobles kind of had the run of the show in England, okay, while John was focused on France, but now he doesn't have France. Now they're coming into clash, into conflict. Okay, so the nobles, they're really angry with him. They kind of get their soldiers together, flex their muscles a little bit, start flexing their political power, and they come to him and they force him to sign a document, force him to sign a charter, a set of rules, which basically give the nobles certain rights and limit the king's rights. And this charter, this document, this agreement was called the Magna Carta. Okay, got a quick video here. Check that out. It's going to explain why the Magna Carta was so huge. Okay. Oops, so sorry. So it is going to limit the power of the king. You can check that out in that video there that we watched in class. Okay, and it's a step towards democracy just because it takes us a little bit further from a monarchy. Monarchy, you have one ruler, makes all the rules. But if you've got something like the Magna Carta that starts telling the king what rules they need to follow, starts giving power to some of the people. Now in this case, it was nobles, it was rich people. That gets us closer to democracy. Doesn't get us there because it's still just giving power to the rich people. Doesn't really help the poor people, but it's a step towards power for all the people. Okay. All right, so what did the Magna Carta do? It's going to take some of the power away from the king. The Magna Carta said that the king could no longer collect taxes unless a council agreed to it. That was the lords, the nobles. Okay. If anybody was free, aka they were not a slave, and they were accused of crimes, they got a fair trial. They got to go to and have a trial with a jury, with peers. Okay. So it's a step towards democracy. Didn't get them to voting and everybody making decisions together, but it got them closer. Okay. Because now even the king has to follow the rules. Next big step is the formation of Parliament. Edward I called for a meeting of representatives to advise him and help make him laws. This meeting was known as Parliament, and it allowed for a greater share of ruling England together. Now, at first, it's going to be split into two groups. There's the House of Lords. So at first, it's just the rich people, the nobles who are coming together to help the king rule. But eventually, we will get the House of Commons. So the House of Lords, that's the nobles, okay, and the clergy, the church workers. They're coming to help the kings of England make decisions. But then eventually we will get the House of Commons, okay. This is knights and townspeople, business people, coming in and helping to help the king make laws and advise the king as well. This is another step towards democracy. More people in Europe are getting involved in the government. Okay? It's not full-blown voting for the leaders, okay, like modern democracy or republics, but it is a step. More people are getting power. There will also be monarchies that pop up in Spain, monarchies that pop up in other places, such as Portugal, Italy, okay, different places like this. So, what I'm going to hop to, and if you need to, you can always back up the video and pause on any of those slides, or go to the Canvas page and go to the Nearpod if you want to fill any of those in. But I want to show you guys there's two options. Since we're talking about charters, documents that basically allow townspeople to come up with their own rules, and we're talking about the Magna Carta, I've got two options for you. For those of you who like to be a little more creative, okay, like to come up with your own ideas, I came up with this basically charters called the Swedera Charter, where we're pretending that benevolent king and magnificent King Hildebrand, that's me, has decided to grant you and has agreed to give these students, the town of Swedera, its own charter, okay? Meaning that the townspeople, the students, can come up with their own laws, own regulations. Now, it can't violate any existing laws. So, for example, all the laws still have to fall under respectful, responsible, and safe, okay? Just like our normal rules. So, for example, you can't say no one will get in trouble for fighting, because that violates the king's laws, okay? Violates the respectful, responsible, and the safe. You can, however, pick something like everyone will choose their own seats at lunch, always, right? Okay, because I remember last year they gave some assigned seats, other years they gave some assigned seats. So maybe you choose to make that a law so that it can never be changed, and you can always choose your own seat. Or maybe you come up with something different, right? You change what kind of classes they take, the requirements each year, okay? You're going to come up with 5 laws, okay? You come up with 5 laws, and you'll see you have to do a couple things. You have to write the rule, the consequence, who will enforce the rule, how it will be enforced, okay? So what's the rule? What happens if somebody breaks it? Who's going to make sure everybody does what they're supposed to do? How are they going to do that? Do that 5 times, and then you will share out and present your best ones to the class, and we'll vote on them. Create our own little class charter. So I will make an editable version of this that will be posted on Canvas. Okay, so look for that on the Canvas page. Option number 2, if you're like, no, I don't want to do a Swedera Charter, okay, my brain doesn't work that way. I want something more concrete. I have typed up here a Magna Carta simulation. Now, there's a couple big players in that Magna Carta that went down in England. Okay, you have the Pope and the Church. Okay, making decisions and trying to influence what happened with the Magna Carta, the Great Charter that the King had to sign. You also have some questions. Okay, a little type up on what the Pope wants and why they want that. You'll have to kind of put the notes in there, what they want, why they want that. Second part is the barons or the nobles. Okay, a little write-up about their role in the Magna Carta, what they want and why they want it. So you have to fill those in. And then finally, the king. What does the king want and why does the king want it? And eventually, all three groups, the Pope, the nobles, and the king, they're going to have to come up with an agreement and sign this charter, make a document that outlines the rules. What they're going to try to do is, well, basically, there's a couple different discussion questions. You need to answer all of them. Okay? After reading through each section, telling me what those people want, why they want it, you're going to have to answer these questions. Okay? This is going to be your version of the Magna Carta, your document you're making. After each question, okay, fill it in, move on to the next question. Okay? This is essentially you saying, hey, this is how all these three groups are going to negotiate and the rules of how they're going to run England. Okay? So answer those questions. If you get stuck on any of those, let me know. Send me an email. Come find me. So option number one is you can create your own charter for Swedair Middle School, coming up with the rules and explaining them, and then present which one you think is best to the class later. Or number two. Okay, number two, if you want something more concrete from history, go through, read about the Pope's role in the Magna Carta, read about, and answer the questions, read about the barons' role, the nobles' role in the Magna Carta, and what they want, why they want it. And then read about the king's role in England during the Magna Carta and what he wants, why he wants it. And then answer each question where you're essentially making up a rule to go in the Magna Carta. You're making your own version of the Magna Carta. Again, if you get stuck, send me an email. Pull me aside. I'll help you out. All right, folks, have fun.